10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, my friends in Sasquatch Land. Another Tuesday night, and I have another great show for you all tonight. Welcome to Discover Sasquatch, the podcast. Our special guest tonight is Captain Joe from the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. And he's here to tell us about a sighting that he had on a military base here in the States. We're very excited to have him on board tonight. How has everybody been doing? It's been a couple weeks since we've been on. I'd like to say hi to a couple of people in the chat tonight. Hello, Miss Christine. That's a tough name. Roque. If I pronounce it wrong, I'm sorry. Blue-Eyed Northern is in the house. The Scottish Wildman, welcome back. Brown Dwarf is in the house. Shane and Nelson in the house. How is everybody's doing? Just want to wish everybody, before we get too far, a very happy Thanksgiving from us to all. I hope you get to spend some time with your families and celebrate any way that you all do in each other's households. So hello, Karen, Rob. Just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. And I just wanted to say a couple little things. My friend Cornell from the No Such Thing podcast has some stickers that he's selling. He wants to use the profits to do his StreamYard service to bump up to 1080p for you guys. Go on over there and pay him a visit. He's only asking $7, so I bought one of those. And support your local researchers, t-shirts, whatever you can. I have a Miss Kim Ryutz. I don't know how to pronounce her name tonight either, but I have one of her t-shirts on tonight. I was going to wear the Cowboy Joe Passes shirt, but I couldn't find it. So please support your local researcher. Wow, the chat's on fire. All right, well, let's get this show underway. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, Captain Joe.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and good evening, Chris, and thank you for having me on tonight.
The pleasure is all mine, my friend. The pleasure is all mine. Very excited to have you on the show tonight. As everybody knows, we are very good friends with Johnny Two Bears, and
yes,
you all have your own podcast that you guys should all go over, like, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. They have a great little podcast themselves. go on over there to the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade and leave a like and a thumbs up. That helps the channels out. That helps us out. And I would love for you guys to all do that here tonight also too. So hello, my friend. Finally, we get to talk. I've been excited for this show for what? I booked you about a month ago, and
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
very excited to hear the whole. I've heard bits and pieces over your guys' podcast, and I'm ready to hear it from start to finish here tonight. So
No, thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my sighting. I know when Johnny Two Bears and Angie and I, we did our first podcast. It on the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. It was about my sighting, and we were so new at the whole podcast thing. We didn't even have good audio, you know. But anyways, I hope you can hear me fine. And I welcome this opportunity to be able to talk to your audience, just because, as I told you earlier, my sighting, it still bothers me today, just because of the severity of the training that was going on at the moment, and it's one of those things where, when you see something like, it shouldn't be there. It's as out of place as someone pushing a baby carriage across a crosswalk during a green light. That they should not be doing that.
right.
But anyways, you tell me where you'd like me to start.
Well, before I think your background's very important for everybody
Okay.
to hear, because it's
Yeah.
important to set up the story, and
Okay.
we'll go from there. So tell everybody
Yeah.
about what brought you up to this experience, your life beforehand.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? Call me Captain Joe. Yeah. Right. I am a retired um, uh, infantry officer, United States Army. I started off my career as a private when I enlisted at 17, and worked my way up through the ranks. Um, and then went through Officer Candidate School, OCS. Right, I earned my commission, meaning earn my commission that through the President of the United States, gives you the power to be an officer in the United States military. I took a lot of pride in doing that. That was the one point in my career. I was enlisted infantryman at that point, and then I had an opportunity to branch any other branch in the officer corps. I could have gone aviation, I could have gone transportation or medical officer, but I had already gone through pretty much every infantry course that a young infantryman can go to, right? Ranger school, Pathfinder, whatnot, jump school, and the lords and that said, you are not going to branch anything else, but you're going to be an infantry officer. So that career path was pretty much set for me. I became an 11 Alpha at that point, right, which is an infantry officer designation. But anyways, I did my time as a platoon leader there at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then deployed multiple times. My last deployment was in Iraq, 2009. I was wounded September 18th, 2009, just southwest of Baghdad. The result of those injuries, I was a limb salvage patient for many, many years, meaning a limb salvage is I chose to do everything I can with the medical team to keep my limbs, meaning my lower left leg. Unfortunately, through the years, my wounds were a little bit too severe. My body wasn't able to heal and keep my lower limb, and then I became an amputee. So I got into cool little prosthetic leg now. I don't let that stop me. But I was medically retired from the Army in 2011. Since then, I've worked as a consultant for several companies in the outdoor and government contract type companies. Um, and then I guess it will kind of roll into like my sighting and the role that I had at that time. If you want me to go ahead and start that.
Well, first, before we go any further, I want to say thank you for your service.
Ah,
Our freedom is because of people like you that put your life on the line for us, and I just want to say that's very much appreciated here at Discover Sasquatch, and I'm sure a lot of people out there that are listening are thinking the same thing.
well, thank you.
Yeah, to just to lose a limb like that, I couldn't even imagine. So,
Well, thank you.
um, it's yeah, it's needed and appreciated.
Yeah.
So, you not to just jump right from that, but
Mhm.
we'll keep going. Um, so you're out, you've been out in the woods your whole entire life. I mean, you've been a hunter for how many years?
Gosh, ever since I was probably 9, 10 years old, my father, he was also in the Army at the time, he got me into hunting. My mother passed away when I was 11, and there was a time that we were stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and my dad would have to go to work, and in lieu of getting a babysitter, he would drive me off post and drop me off in a canyon with a 30-30 and a backpack full of food and water and pick me up at dark. And I would go and hike the hills all day hunting. you know, um, yeah, it's always been a passion. I'm very fortunate that I get to work now in the outdoor industry with a hunting show. So as you and I have been communicating the last several weeks, from November 1st to just this past Saturday, I've been on the road. I was, we filmed an episode in Kansas, then I went over to Missouri, and then from Missouri to Illinois, and then, finally back home to Georgia. Um, September, I was in the Tetons there in Wyoming. Spent 10 days out there, and pretty much in the same creek and valley area where the young lady, the Gabby, made national headlines. Her body was found. We pretty much hunted in that creek area. However, we were 22 miles from the campsite where her body was found. But it just kind of tells you the type of areas that I get to frequent or get out to. So
Right. Yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere. You're in no
a
man's land.
lot, a
Right.
lot, yeah.
And that's important for your sighting report that you're going to come, your sighting interaction, whatever you want to call it. It's important for everybody to know that you are no stranger to a gun. You're
No,
no stranger to a scope. You're no
no,
stranger to being in intense situations. You're not a stranger to that whole scene. And
correct.
now leading up to your sighting, was it at the end of your career, or was it at the beginning of your
So, so I was hired um, to plan and execute one of the country's largest sniper competitions. The controlling entity that has this sniper competition, when they acquired it, it used to be held up in various locations, Kentucky, But anyways, they had asked me what I thought would really kind of make this competition, a little bit more special. And I said, well, why don't we bring it back onto a military post? One, just because of the assets that a military base has as far as range complexes, range usage, right? Plus, there's miles and miles of trails that you can ruck on. So those who are not familiar with rucking, it's basically carrying a really heavy backpack and walking with that pack and a rifle as fast as you can from point A to point B. you know, but when I proposed that, that idea and that concept, it was also up to me to go and find a military installation that would be willing to allow 80 plus 2-man teams, to include foreign individuals, foreign militaries, to come participate and compete in this match. Um, you know, coming from that community, I knew the commanders, I knew the right folks at the right bases, and I worked through the channels to bring this competition here to a military base here in Georgia. Now, you know, in doing so, there's always some roadblocks, right? And as you can imagine, there's a lot of questions, right? Like, hey, what are you going to do? People who are not familiar with the sniper trade craft, or the long range shooting craft, yeah, they're not, they're kind of wary about that, because like, oh man, we're just going to let all these 2-man teams loose and let them run all over the woods and do their thing, and no, it's a lot of orchestration of moving groups of individuals from point A to point B. They end up at a certain shooting range at such and such a time. They shoot, they pack up their stuff, and then they ruck 5-6 miles to another place. Now, in doing this competition, it's held in January. My sighting was towards the end of summer, leading up to this event. So this is about over 4.5 years ago now. However, the competition is still held where it's at. And I think you and I kind of discussed. I really didn't want to disclose the name of the base, just for the safety factor. And we'll get into that a little bit more here during when I tell you, like,
Yeah, that's fine. It's no problem. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, so you can imagine. All right, you're gonna host a very large sniper competition with 80 plus 2-man teams. So we're talking close to almost 100 2-man teams. So that's almost 200 bodies, right?
The best of the best. These guys want to win.
So you've got representation from the best of the military, best of federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, and even some professional and amateur civilian teams. So you got Ranger battalions, you got Army Special Forces, you've got CAG, which is the Army Delta members out competing and whatnot. They even had a team from Texas A&M, the ROTC shooting team. Plus a lot of other active duty military teams that had entered, and we had teams from China, believe it or not. So that was one of the big things, is one, getting them permission, to not only come, being a foreign national, right? And obviously there's a lot of paperwork on my end that we had to deal with, because every person that entered had to undergo a background check, right, to be given permission to even enter the post. And once they were on the post, you can imagine, now I've got all these people. I got all these people with very precise, high power weapons. They had to be secured. All their ammunition had to be secured. So it's a lot of planning. But the most of the planning was going on leading up to the actual event, and so that's where I spent hours with my daughter. My oldest kid, my daughter. I'd have her come out, and her and I would ruck the routes together. We would, I would make her carry a 35-pound pack on her back, and I said, okay, you have to get from this point to that point in such a much time, because if she can do it, then I can expect a competitor to be able to do it. So imagine us doing this for several months ahead of time, because all right, this route was too long, or I need to change a route here. Now I had access to the base to go anywhere I wanted to, you know, in the range complex area where the competition would be held. Now, this is many thousands of acres of training areas on a military base. There are tank trails, fire break trails that go scatter all over the place. Yep. So, all right. So what you have here is actually a um, area, the impact area of, and where some targets are set out. But if you see those roads there, those are dirt roads that are on the backside of the range, which is so we'll call all that area, that forested area, it's called a small arms impact area, right? SAIA. Now, anyone in the military knows uh, small arms impact area. That's where bullets land.
Right.
So when you're on a firing range, you have the firing point or the firing line. That's where you are, right? And everyone's weapon is pointed downrange at targets. And
No, that ain't it.
oh, you're bringing up another picture I sent.
No, I got the wrong one. That's all right.
But anyways, so you have that impact area. So the day of my sighting, right, NMA, I was working with several active duty teams from the local base, from the local garrison there, that were going to compete in the sniper match come the winter. Now these troops are fairly new. They're not from the infantry branches, so they're not as familiar with the communication between a sniper and a spotter. So those are things that I was working with them on, just so when they did compete, they would they would have at least the basic knowledge to be able to get out there and do their best. On this particular day, we were on the range, and it's 1,000-yard range. So obviously there's many steel targets on this range. These steel targets, we call them EPS.XX, right? Full size EPS.XX. So it's a representation of a human torso, right? 36 inches tall, 18 inches wide, and they're scattered throughout the range. Now, at the 1,000-yard target area are some steel targets, which were 36 by 36, a little bit bigger, just because it's a greater distance, and you just want to be able to see the rounds impact these steel targets. So obviously, when they impact the targets, you also hear like a metallic gong. Right? That's the bullet impacting the steel. So you shoot, bang, and then a couple seconds later you hear ding. That's the noise of the bullet, impacting, and then that noise traveling back to you at the fire line, so you can hear it. Now, upon firing, my job as a spotter for both these teams was to scan both the targets. So I had a left and a right target, and so when the range is hot, meaning it was we were able to fire. I was standing on the observation line, just a little bit above the shooters, with a range safety officer. A range safety officer, his job there is to obviously control all the safety of the range. He's the one that calls when the firing line is hot or when it's cold. Meaning hot, meaning you can shoot at that time. Cold is right. Cold range, no shooting. Everyone steps away from their guns. We were at a point where the range was hot. We had active shooters firing at 1,000-yard targets downrange, and I'm sitting here behind a Leupold Mark IV spotting scope. This is a military issued spotting scope. It's a very expensive, very high power, high quality piece of glass. Yep, that's it right there. So I was at pretty much max magnification, 60 power at 1,000 yards. So obviously I can see a very large target at, especially when it's a 36-inch target. I mean, through my glass, it's big enough where I can see the bullet hit the white paint and leave a little black indentation where it chips the paint away. Anyways, as I'm scanning from target to target, I catch movement just off the left target. And so this is where my life kind of changes, right? This is where everything that you always joke about Bigfoot, or you just joke about the famous pose of a Bigfoot like walking. But here I actually see this thing off the left berm. Now that berm comes down, and there's a fire break, and it goes away from the shooting line, and this large thing, person, creature, whatever, crosses this dirt road, fire break, going right to left. And now this roadway is, it's made by a dozer, right? It's wider than a Humvee. You can pretty much drive 2 full-size trucks side by side down this road. But this thing crosses the road. It wasn't running. It just was walking, and it crosses the road like in a step. And that's what kind of gets me, because now I'm sitting there looking at this, and I make a comment to the RSO, who is also on a spotting scope right beside me, and he's to my left. I'm like, do you see that in the fire break? It just crossed right to left. And he's like, oh God, what is that? And he calls ceasefire, and all the shooting stops. All we can see, this thing is just moving through some brush and some pine trees at the time. It wasn't running. It wasn't ducking, and that's what, and there's, that's what replays in my mind a lot, is like, okay, if I am a sensible human being and I am just happen to be walking downrange of 1,000-yard firing line with multiple shooters shooting high-power rifles down in my direction, one, you're still going to hear the report, right? The firing. Pow. There was no ducking. There was no, holy smokes, let me get behind a tree. Let me, duck for cover. There was none of that. This thing was just moving, like just strolling. It wasn't running. It was not in uniform. It was on 2 legs, through a 60 power Mark IV spotting scope. It wasn't a bear that just happened to get up and trot across the road. No, this thing had knees. It had long arms. It wasn't in a uniform. And so when we called ceasefire, now it's the RSO's job, right, to call range control. Range control office is, several miles away at another building, and they had to verify that we were cold, and they sent an individual out there, and this individual comes out, and we start talking. And I asked the questions: are there any other hot ranges or training areas in use downrange? None. We were the only range that was hot that day. We were the only range that was in use. So no other range in this whole complex had anybody on it. There was no maintenance going on in any other ranges, no maintenance downrange across the berm in the impact area. So and no one had checked in that range control office that coordinates all this, that there was any work, no timber cruisers or, forestry people or whatnot. So there should not have been a person there. And that's what bothered me, because, in my 15-year career, being on ranges many times, a year, I have never had to call a ceasefire because we had an individual or walking downrange. You just don't do that.
Hmm.
And, you know, and how do you, I mean, how do you file, a report such as this? And that's enough to be a career ender, right? If by chance you happen to injure someone down there, uh, but anyways, I sitting there having to describe what I saw, you know, and knowing that, all right, man, I'm a former commissioned officer in the United States Army. I'm an infantry officer. I'm well respected in the shooting community. And I just saw something walking, not crawling, walking. And it was bigger than, than a like individual standing at that distance through a spotting scope, um, we had to go down and look at that crossing point. So it's very funny. I eyeballed the distance, using the ranging reticle in the spotting scope. I said, man, I think it was about 1,200 yards, right? It actually came out to be like 1136. So I was pretty damn close, for catching an object moving. Now 1136 was because we found a crossing point. There was no vibrant boot sole impressions in the dirt. You right? I and I didn't know much about like Bigfoot or cast making, because I one at the time you're like, who's thinking about a Bigfoot?
Right. Yeah. It's not happening.
Yeah,
You're thinking,
exactly.
yeah, this is not happening.
Yeah, exactly. But here is the crossing point. We turn around, right? There's our firing point behind us. We got a laser rangefinder, and I shoot the distance. I'm like, all right, 1136, right? And I said, man, this thing was big. Gil, the RSO at the time, he's telling me, he goes, I don't know what this thing was doing. It was just walking. So we both agree. Color, I said, what color was it? I say more, like brown gray color, right? And he's kind of like, same thing, gray brown, right? All right. It wasn't BDUs. It wasn't woodland, camouflage. It wasn't the ACU color, But anyways, this thing crossed this very wide road in a manner that I would have to take a Carl Lewis run and long jump to even I can't even cross that road if I'd long jumped it. This thing just, and there was only one impression in that dirt road at that section there, and then there was another depression right at, where the box blade pushes sand and dirt, and it kind of leaves like a lip, on each side. And there was one depression over on the left. Again, there was no boot sole markings, no tread markings whatsoever.
Did it look like it? Did it look like to you it glided across the road?
It wasn't running. It wasn't head bobbing. It just, just like that.
Many reports of them gliding like that.
Yeah, it was a very smooth thing, and even when it had crossed, obviously into more of the brushy and pine tree terrain there, and you have to imagine, those impact areas, they get a lot of work done from controlled burns throughout the year, because it keeps it from catching fire in case a round goes downrange and catches bushes on fire. You don't want to have the whole place go up in huge fire. But this thing just went through the brush, again, very smoothly. I kind of used the term, it was walking with a purpose. So it didn't stop. It didn't stop in the middle of the large fire break road. It just kept on going. Now, the thing that really got me thinking a little bit more about the Bigfoot thing was like after I got home, right? I said, man, what the hell? I said, if it's not a person, what can it be? And I kind of kept that with me. And I do like everyone else, right? I I go to Google, right? And you're doing everything from weird sightings, or is there Bigfoot sightings, Georgia, and lo and behold, I find this website, the BFRO, right? And there's that database, right, of sighting reports, and I I see that sure enough, in that county, on that military installation, no more than 1,000, uh, 1.2 clicks from where I saw this thing is a certain creek. And in the late 70s, a soldier on that base had a face-to-face encounter. In fact, there was a drawing, whether he made it or whatnot. There's a drawing of him and this big Bigfoot. And so you know what? I pull open the base map, which has all of my routes that I'm working on, for the sniper competition. And sure enough, the crossing point and that creek, this creature was moving heading towards that creek area, to that branch that was named in this late 70s BFRO report. And it was, like I said, 1.2 clicks, right? I have hiked around that branch, that creek area. In fact, during the sniper competition, we actually there's gates, keys that they had given me to unlock access, and it goes through like an old grenade training area, right past that spot. And yeah, I'm just thinking, man, what are the coincidences? Some guy, some soldier in the late 70s has this sighting there. And then, so it made me start thinking, I'm like, well, why the hell did this guy, what was this soldier doing on that end of the range, right? Because here we are shooting from way back, 1,000 yards away towards the berm. Well, lo and behold, I go back to my father. My father was stationed at this installation, right, before he went to Vietnam. And back in those days, the range was flipped, where they actually did the shooting in the location where the targets were, and the targets were where we were doing the shooting from.
So you guys switched it around, and it
yeah.
didn't know.
Yep. So it totally makes sense. I'm like, okay, so that's why there was a soldier on that end in the late 70s, right? And I'm like, okay, well, that's great to know. And then you talk to some of the range, the range staff there, and they concur. Yep, back in those days, the ranges were flipped. But again, this incident, obviously one of those things like, man, I kind of kept to myself, because, it's like, it's, yeah, who am I going to share it with, and, yeah, I wasn't worried about ridicule or stuff like that. You know what, man, yeah, I, I served my country overseas. You know what, I fought in combat. I lost a limb. Seeing what I saw is not going to bother, it's not going to bother, not going to bother me, at least, at all. But anyways, and that's when, I saw Johnny Two Bears' page one day, and just lo and behold, it just, one of his posts, he said something about, him being a Marine. So I'm like, all right, if anyone were to understand the severity of what, my incident, my sighting, a military hot range, a thing walking downrange in the impact area, this guy's going to get it, And so, when I reached out to him, he knew exactly, like, okay, this is a that's a major no-no. That's an incident report. No one wants to have to type up.
Right. I mean, there's a shooting competition going on. There's
Yeah.
there's sniper rifles everywhere.
Yep.
All these people on the range. You're not going to be going down and walking across.
No.
You're not
No.
It's not going to
So
happen.
so let me move forward now.
Well, I got a question for you before we go
Go
forward.
ahead.
Looking back now, what you know now and what you've researched and everything, while you and your daughter were setting up, did anything strange happen that you just wrote off as being just everyday something?
You know what? So it there are a few trails that we would walk, and then times that I would go out by myself, and I had the folks from Garmin USA um, would send me some very hyper accurate GPS units, right? Because remember now, in this competition, if I tell a team that they got to go from point A to point B and they've got X amount of time to get there and the distance is this far, I've got to be spot on. I don't want them to be cheated. I don't want, these competitors to go back and say, oh, well, you know what? It was really 2 miles, but he said it was 1.7. No, we had to be accurate, right? I even had the installation's geological survey teams come out with me with their GPS units, right? And we would use their equipment to double check everything I did. But and even my daughter at some points, we would have to hike these routes ourselves first off, right? And we would mark them on a maps. Now, there's times where I saw breaks. What do you call them? Tree breaks, or like the things bent over.
Yeah.
And I was just, I just kind of dispelled them because they're on the side of a road, and I'm like, I just probably, a bunch of privates driving a Humvee, and they said, I'm just gonna hit this tree. However, as I start looking more into the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, I'm like, well, if I'm taking an off-road vehicle and I decide to hit a tree, you're probably gonna hit 2 or 3 of them, right?
Right.
Not just one perfect one, not one. And I see some of these things, but I don't know. I had no idea that these are potential markers or things that a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch does, right? It wasn't until I started, really, learning a lot from Johnny, and then a lot of the other Facebook posts, and obviously, you start seeing this stuff on TV, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I've seen that, and it wasn't a twig, right? And we're talking, trees bigger around than this thing,
Right. Live saplings just twisted and broken over.
Yeah, but there's not, the tree to the left or the right is perfectly fine,
Right.
and but what, I never really got like the EBGBs or nothing like that, just because, like when I was going, it's kind of like I had a task, to do. I'm sitting there, with the GPS in my hand and blah blah blah, and I'm marking things out with flagging and whatnot. But it wasn't until the actual days of the competition when something else happened, then it hit me hard, and I'll share that whenever you're ready, so.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so now we fast forward into January, right? This competition is always held in the January time frame because it's a very cold and a very miserable time of year. Our job is to test the competitors, right? They're not hiking on the beaches of Maui, right? So something I also have to tell you is this competition has 3 different divisions, but the hardest division requires the competitors to sleep out at night, right? So they had to bivouac at a bivouac location. they carried everything, all their food, all their ammunition with them in their rucksacks, right? And at the end of the day, we coordinated them come to a bivouac location. Part of the safety protocol would be me, or not. We'd have a team collect all their ammunition, right? And then their ammunition was locked up in a building, and then these competitors slept out at night. So now it's cold, it's wet, and believe me, the first day competition, it rained like cats and dogs. I mean, it was miserable. We The objective is to make as many of them quit as possible, right? The more that quit, the better off the competition is.
Right.
Okay. And believe me, we had some great teams dropping out. I mean, right off the bat, right? They didn't, the roads were too muddy. They didn't, some teams went to the wrong points, right? Which plays well into the toughness of this competition. So this is, 3 days of doing this. Now, we had a small army of staff. The staff were people that ran all the individual ranges, right? They were scorekeepers. They were logistics support people, so we would meet at night at a large complex, and we were having meals delivered to us. And so it was the second night of competition. It was, another, kind of a wet, cold, damp night. We had our meals dropped off to us for all the staff, and we were. This was about 9:30 at night. The people that had dropped off the meals were leaving to go back home. And on their drive back, they're on the range road. So the range road is paved, and they were several miles away. And they called me on my phone and said, "Hey, do you have competitors out at this area?" And I was like, "No, all the competitors are in for the night. They're in the bivouac area." I know this because when all the competitors finish at the end of the day, and January gets dark. So we had these folks in before sunset, right? So we're talking between 4 and 5 o'clock p.m. Right? These support staff people were driving away now at 10 p.m. and they're saying, "Well, there's a large person in a ghillie suit trying to cross a road," and I was like, "No. We don't have night operations going on." And they're, so at the end of the end of the day, we also have to radio in to range control, saying ranges XYZ, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many ranges are cold, right? And they shut down all the ranges for the day. Okay, so there is no training going on whatsoever anywhere out there, but yet the people that just dropped off, 2 people that just dropped us off our meals are leaving to go home, and they see a large somebody in a ghillie suit trying to cross a road. and I'm like, "No, it's not one of my competitors, because they're all accounted for in the bivouac camping area." So I have to hop in my truck. I go and meet them at the spot and now they're parked over on the side of the road. And these ladies are a little shaken, right? Because when I tell them it's not a soldier, it's not a competitor, they're trying to convince themselves, okay, it was a bear. Because in their minds, what else could it be, right?
Right.
And sure, so they show me the spot, and I'm like, okay, well, and I tell them, "Hey, I'll follow you guys out to the main gates of the range complex." They go out, I follow them. They go on. I turn my truck around, come back to that area, and I kind of mark that location, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, So I pull out my map and I kind of put it next there where I'm at, and it's in a lowland area, right? And I go back up, and we finished everything else, for the scorekeeping and briefing for the next day's competition. Now I got some time to decompress, and I pull out my map again. And lo and behold, that map and that spot where these ladies saw this thing in a ghillie suit trying to cross the road was in that same creek branch that was in that BFRO sighting, and almost a straight line from where my sighting was back in the late summer. And it's something about that spot, man. I tell you, it. And whether it was the hours and hours of shooting and competitor, different groups of teams of competitors moving around the range complexes all day long, walking on all the different trails, um, you would think to yourself, okay, I'm going to hunker down here and hide during the day. And then at night, I will try to exfil, leave this area, go find somewhere safe, because they're doing all this movement and shooting in my backyard. Right.
Right.
So that's what I'm thinking. I have no idea what a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch would think, but
Right.
logically, that's what I would be doing. Right. But anyways, man, so now here it is, January, the second night of our competition, right? And so I had to ask these people the next day when they brought out, the breakfast. I'm like, hey, about this thing you saw, but how big was it? So they pointed out like one of our competitors, big dude, right? All right. He goes, but bigger in the shoulders and taller. I'm like, well, okay. And this guy's like 6'5", and he's like 200 something pounds. I was like, okay, that's a big guy in a ghillie suit, right? And I had to ask him. I said, it didn't get down on four legs. No, it was trying to walk onto the road. Their headlights caught it. It turned around and walked right back down the shoulder. And I said, did it run? Nope. It just stood there, and they drove right past it. Right. I'm like, okay.
Well,
So coincidence? I don't know. Was it someone trying to pull a prank? Why the hell would someone pull a prank like that during a sniper competition where people are using live rounds?
in January, in the
January,
with no flashlight, in the middle of nowhere.
at 10 o'clock at night, right? And knowing that there are support staff, you got the general, and all his staff driving around all day, spectators, sponsors, out there watching all this stuff, so I don't know. Again, that was just kind of weird, but now when I look at the topo map and I look at, this certain branch, and if you look at the BFRO report from the late 70s, it names that right there. It's just, to me, it looks like a travel route, but those are my words, but yeah,
that's what everybody has is IMOs, and that's anybody can give, is my opinion. That's all. That's it. There is nothing written in stone about these guys. That's for sure. And
yeah,
I think I agree with you on the creek being a travel route. I think they travel the creeks. I think that's how they hide their travel routes more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a pretty swampy area down in that there's a fork there, and it's pretty swampy. I've since then I've made a few hikes in those areas. I put a game camera up. Have not. I've got pictures of every other piece of wildlife out there, but I again, it kind of goes back to like what I personally saw should not have been there. What these two support people saw on the second night of the competition at 10 p.m. should not have been there. And I know, because they call me like, do we have like a night operation going on? No. who the hell's going to wear a ghillie suit? I mean,
Right.
you know, yeah, it wasn't on the packing list for the competitors, right? So
Right.
none of
Right.
them had one.
Right.
But you know, it's very bothersome until you start thinking, could it possibly be a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot? And then I've had the discussion with Johnny a lot. It's like, you know, and other people, uh, you know, if you don't want to be found, man, talk about how big of a military bases are. You
Mm.
know, you're talking thousands of acres, and then you dissect the base. You got the main post area, right? So that's where you like, you know, your hospitals and your school classroom buildings are, whatnot. You know, then you got these vast training areas, which are, you know, which are secured, but you know, I mean, not high fenced or anything like that. But I mean, these are areas which, if you want to camp out and hide out in the middle, no one's ever going to find you.
Mm.
You know, because there's no. I mean, you have to get a human, a person would have to get permission to go back in there, and you know, you're normally not going to get it, especially in an impact area where there's like, you know, bullets land or there's unexploded ordnance, right? So it's just it's like, man, what a perfect hiding spot. You know, it's like, all right, close enough, but far enough, you
Right.
know. And those that small arms impact area gets opened up like once a year. So the post game management, like the you know, and wildlife biologists, they put food plots in those areas, right? And they consider it like the trophy hunting area, but they only open it up for one weekend a year, like in December, you know. And man, they grow some big deer back in there, you know. But other than that, man, the place is closed off, you know. So I mean, now you got a lot of deer, you got a lot of turkeys, birds, and whatnot. You know, you got water, you know. What else would a large creature like a Sasquatch need? You
Not,
know?
not
Yeah,
much of nothing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You know. So, anyways, you know, I, again, I go back to, you know, someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, man, like, you know, man, why are you open about talking about this? So I'm like, well, you know, I said, I saw what I saw, just like those Navy pilots saw what they saw, you know, when they were in their jets, right? I'm a commissioned officer holding the same rank as those pilots, right? Um, they may have seen UFOs. You know what? Uh, do I believe them? Yeah. You know what? I believe they saw something that in their training, in their careers, should not have been there in front of them, right? Just like those Navy pilots or whatnot would say the same thing about me. And that Army Ranger captain should not have seen that on a firing range, right?
Right. Right.
So there you go.
That's why it was so important to establish that you're no stranger to that gun site. You're no stranger to the scopes. You're no stranger to the shooting ranges. You're no stranger to any of it.
Yeah.
So what you seen. Bottom line, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And again, you know, it's um, perhaps part of me feels foolish where, you know what, all of my training, I should have been, okay, you know, I should have did a better job of milling, you know, the range distance, you know, using the reticle. But you know, you're at that moment of that shouldn't be there,
Right.
you know, and then now you're following it through a scope, and you know, a big spotting scope, and you're like, what is it doing? Where is it going? Why? And then it just kind of vanishes off in the brush, right? I you know, it's just one of those things where you're like, gosh, you know, what if I was on, you know, what if some roles were switched and I was actually on the rifle and I saw that, you know, you know, you know, you can't shoot a live target on a military range. That's a
Oh
no-no,
no. Oh,
you
you can't.
know? Yeah. you
Especially
know?
something walking on two legs. That's why they don't get shot.
Yeah,
Because nobody knows. They don't
yeah,
know if that's a ghillie suit or what. You don't know what you're seeing.
yeah, or yeah, or a lost soldier, believe me, I mean, I've tried running that scenario, like, maybe, but you know what? Yeah, no AWOL soldiers at the time, right? Um, reported to the garrison, command. So, you know, you can rule out of like some private just had a bad day and I'm going to go walk through the damn, woods for 10 miles.
Right.
Yeah, no, not that, that didn't happen. This was something on two legs, very big, just happened to get caught, you know, um, in my spotting scope in an area that it should have been there, and like I said, um, what was it doing? Who knows? It wasn't running, it wasn't hiding, you know. So yeah,
It wasn't too worried about you guys, obviously.
no,
Because you guys weren't supposed to be there. He does his thing every day or whatever he does. He has his same route. He's probably the same time every day he goes through there.
yeah,
He didn't know you guys were 1,200 yards away, or
yeah. So it, I sent you a picture of the range and it had an arrow of the crossing. You
let me
know,
see. I couldn't get some of your pictures on for some reason. I had
okay,
problems a little while back with that too.
and
I can find it. I'll get there. Hold on.
when I've gone back to that area, you know, especially that crossing point, the perhaps the best spot. Now, if I were
This one?
okay, so that's the range complex, right? So if you can see,
That
okay,
one.
that one right there.
All right.
Okay. Now, you can kind of see to the left, the orange there. It says a crossing point on dirt road, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I have driven back to that spot several times. Now, that crossing spot right there, like if I were to stand in the middle of the dirt road and I were to look left and I were to look right, if I was a platoon leader, an infantry platoon leader, and I had to move myself, a squad of soldiers, or a platoon of soldiers, right, to cross that road, or like that would be the spot to cross because it offered the best cover and concealment on the left and right side of the road. Cover and concealment meaning there was a lot of brush leading up to that spot of the road and a lot of brush on the opposite side of the road. So I mean, it wasn't a wide open spot, Um, it just so happens that when he stepped out in that opening, you know what, he was exposed, and then from there, perhaps he doesn't real, perhaps it doesn't realize how tall it is. Because I mean, that brush on me. So I'm 5'9". That brush on me is about chest high, but this thing, I mean, I can see almost like belly button high.
Right.
So if that tells you anything, yeah, man. I again, I think back with the military mindset. I'm like, all right, using cover and concealment, best place to cross the road without being seen. This is where I would go, and sure enough, that's the exact spot where the foot impressions were. You know, um, smart. I mean, it to me. Perhaps that shows some sign of intelligence. He's just not randomly walking across like some perfectly manicured bush hog field. Yeah.
No, these creatures are very, very, very smart, very intelligent.
Yeah.
Very, very. Do you think most sightings are by accident? Do you think they get caught by accident?
I do. I do. So speaking with some other Army Rangers and friends that have come forward since I've talked about this, um, it's always like, uh, you know, a training evolution or something on the range, or like at the end of the day, this thing's out there hooting and hollering out in the wilderness because it's pissed off because soldiers were, shooting rounds downrange or something, but yeah, I think our the humans interact, catching these things in the open is just by, more accident, I think it would be very hard, and kudos to you and like Johnny Two Bears, who go out like a lot and frequently with the sole mission of trying to find evidence, perhaps even see one up front, up close. I I I think they're very intelligent, and you've you've got to be on your game, and you better have a plan to outmaneuver and outfox them. Uh, you know, but then again, I think about these two ladies who just delivered meals at 10 o'clock at night, and they catch one out trying to cross a road. But you know what? That's all it was. This thing was trying to cross the road, and these ladies were trying to haul butt to get home. That's it.
Right.
If you and I were on foot and we went out to this base and we were to get permission to go scour and comb through all the woods, I don't think we can just sneak up on one. You know, um, I don't know. I guess I always hear, maybe read or see these things on YouTube channels or whatnot about them having scouts or whatnot. But then again, I'm like, hell, man, you know what? United States Army has a Scout MOS. It's a 19 Delta. You know what? So there you go. Right.
Right. No,
Yeah.
they're definitely they're meant to stay hidden. Their family units are meant to stay hidden, and they can do it. I mean, they can do it.
I do. I do believe that. I think they have um, thousands of years of evolution behind them. Um, you, perhaps heightened senses. You know, um, I guess the debate now is, can they see what you and I see, like the same vision? Yeah, I want to believe that. I think they have a different um, uh, uh, vision pattern than us. On our podcast, I had a good friend from the hunting industry. She started a company called Covert Wireless game cameras. So her company makes the wireless cellular deer cameras, right? So many of us have them, right? I mean, I have some on trees in Kansas right now, and I was checking pictures on them earlier today. Right? Um, People always wonder, well, what come we don't get pictures of Bigfoot or Sasquatches on game cameras? Yeah, and I say, okay, you know what? There's people that pop up with was caught on camera, but I think these cameras do emit a certain light, like the IR, the PIR, right? Passive infrared. That this thing can see. Here's a really good example. In Kansas here in the earlier part of November, myself and our cameraman were sitting in the deer blind. We had put out a buck decoy 20 yards away from us, and we were in a camouflage blind, and we had set this up, and we were waiting for dawn to come, hoping that it would attract a big buck that wanted to come fight this decoy. Or sure enough, I mean, we barely had just enough light that our cameraman's camera has a IR setting, right? So it can use infrared light to see images out in front. So it has a couple LEDs that kind of shine out there. Well, he's sitting there talking, and and then he's like, "There's a buck," right? And I could barely see the form of an animal move up at 20 yards to our decoy. And so I have my rangefinder in my hand, and I point at it, because the rangefinder has some bit of magnification. Now I can just see the silhouette of this deer, this big buck out in front of us. And when I hit the rangefinder button, right, my rangefinder emits a little beam. And it reflects off this deer's body, and it's coming back. Well, my cameraman, Matt, he can see the beam reflect off the deer on the camera when it was set on the IR setting, right? So that tells me, right, this rangefinder sends out an IR beam. Now you turn around and you look at these deer cameras, you'll see a little red light through an IR camera. Can a Bigfoot see in that spectrum? You know what? If it has the ability to avoid so many deer or game cameras, then maybe that's something. Something to think about at least, right?
Right.
Now, our guest, when we had her on our show, our podcast, Kimber, her and I, we agree. Like we set up a camera. We do a good job of spraying it down with no scent sprays, right? Especially for bears. Bears just have an affinity and a taste for electronic circuit boards. It's something about like batteries and circuit boards. Bears can smell that stuff, and that's why bears destroy game cameras so much, because it's something in there that they like. They want to chew on, deer. And back in the old days, these cameras would go off and spook. They would spook just because it was a big flash, So the old tactic back in the day was put the cameras up high so the deer just thinks it's like a lightning storm or a thunderstorm, right? Rather than putting it eye level with them, because they know lightning don't flash in front of their eyes, But it wasn't honestly, here just a couple of weeks ago, using a rangefinder, I'm shooting a beam, and it's being picked up on our IR camera, and I'm like, well, there you go. You know what? If the camera can pick it up, something that perhaps can see good in IR, and I want to say wolves are very good at this too. Wolves are very hard to get on camera traps. Something about a wolf's vision. They can see a lot of these game cameras. They will avoid crossing a tree that has a camera strapped to it. No matter how good you hide that camera, there's something that they see and they will stop. So,
Right. So I got a question for you, and then we're going to open it up for everybody else.
Yeah.
You know what Johnny and my friend Chris Connor and I, and there's a few others out there. Actually, Blue-Eyed Northern down in Louisiana, she's got a meter now, and BF Bud. A lot of people have these RF meters. What's your thought? You've heard all the stories. You know what's going on with the radio frequency, what we're picking up. Well, what do you think that is? What do you think's going on?
Okay. So, I quiz Johnny a lot on that, right? Because this is just me having to resort back to, military. That's all I know, and the equipment that we used, right? In Iraq, we used things called a Warlock system, which put out an electronic warfare RF bubble basically between two vehicles, right? So now you got a couple Humvees with these big Warlock systems, and you're able to drive down the streets of Baghdad, and you got an IED bomb maker over there trying to hit the detonate button, and it's not working because these Warlock systems are blocking the signals from the phones, right? Or their walkie-talkies or whatnot, right? So that technology exists. We proved it. We use it in Iraq. We had another thing that, like I told you, and I have no qualms talking about it because I don't know the exact designation of this device, but we always call it a quagmire. This thing was able to obviously record cellular signals, that helps us triangulate where bad guys are, and then we go and pick them up in the middle of the night when they go to bed. But this device was also able to fry. I mean, you point your bumper because they were strapped on the bumper of our gun trucks. You pointed at a group of people out on their cell phones. You hit this, you hit this button, and all their phones just go off dead, and they don't work no more. Now, when it comes to Johnny's research and your research with the RF, it makes me kind of like, all right, is it something special about hair fibers that they have? Like could it be like something static discharge of theirs that's pegging your meters out? I don't know. Is it a maybe some folks want to speculate it may be something not of this world. I don't know, but you know what? You just had Fox News on the other night, right? Talking about that, the Department of Defense is standing up a new division and allocating taxpayer dollars to have a department study the UFO phenomenon again. I would believe that this creature would be classified as something other, to probably be grouped into that. I mean, if I was sitting in an appropriations committee, why not? I mean, if you're going to study UFOs, like, hey, you also have a lot of credible Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomenon, and if these things are able to up and disappear, and if they can live on a military base as secure as some of our bases are, I mean, that tells me our bases aren't that secure.
Oh, masters. They're masters.
Yeah. I watched that 168 hours, documentary, and I just have to sit there. I'm like, something's out in front of y'all. You're just not seeing it. I posed the question to Johnny, a while back, was like, are you guys, near cell towers? Are you near any flight paths for airlines, right? Any naval stations, and I say naval stations because there's a thing called the VLF, right? Very low frequency. These are large antennas that rather than going up, they go way down in the ground, and so that's how we communicate with submarines underwater, right? Because when submarines are underwater, they don't have a car antenna that sticks up out of water. These things are hundreds of feet under, and the way to communicate with them is VLF signal through the earth, which goes through the water. And if there's transmissions going on when you guys are out doing your things, I don't know if these RF pick these up. I don't know. I just know that the VLF signal is out there. Things like that is what makes whales and dolphins beach themselves.
Right.
So,
no, that's why I asked with your experience with all that. But the only time we've had, oops, you're echoing a little bit.
Okay.
The only time we've had the RF hits is when they came in on us and started throwing rocks, and then those RF meters would just spike, and it was pretty crazy stuff.
I still wonder, and I asked Johnny about getting a balloon and rubbing his head, with his meter to see if that changes anything.
Oh, try it out.
Is it something where fast physical activity on their part, causing any static RF, disturbance?
It would have to be huge, Captain, because we're getting measurements of 2 microwaves open door running at the same time. That's what we're getting hit with in the face.
Yeah, and so when Johnny had mentioned that, I said, man, that's kind of like unhealthy levels, right? Yeah. And it has to be, and this is just me. And as I mentioned to Johnny, I said something like that. one microwave door is one thing, two microwave door. I mean, that has to be directional, right? I mean, that has to be like right at you guys.
Yeah, I could point the meter with the cat. I could point the meter towards the area where the rocks were coming from, and that's when it would get stronger. You would move it away, it would die.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't
crazy.
know. See, you guys are definitely onto something, and I don't want I just a couple days ago, I was walking to a deer blind in these cold, wet bottoms of Illinois, and I got my headlamp on, and I got a bow in my hand, and I see two big eye shine from deer, and I said, "Oh, play," and I'm telling myself it's deer, you know. Last thing I want to deal with is some 8 foot something that has predator cloaking capabilities. When all I have is a bow that I can't shoot in the dark.
Yeah, yeah, we can go down that tunnel, but we got some questions for you.
Yeah,
We
go
could talk
ahead.
about this RF stuff for about 3 hours.
Yeah,
The predator camo it can happen. RF bends light, and they got translucent hairs. So you put RF
It-
bending light, translucent hairs together. What do you got? You got
yeah, and
predator
in the
camo.
Army community, we tested fiber optics, for that type of camouflage before,
Right.
you know.
Crazy.
So
All right, we got a question from Nana Boss for you. Have
okay.
you ever found any tree structures or reports of a tree structure on the base?
So the closest thing that I would say to tree structure um, was finding big, I would say healthy trees that were not um, your typical teepee fashion, like you see on a lot of these TV shows, or uprooted trees. They were healthy trees, kind of bent, weaved in rainbow fashion, right? And again, back then, I just didn't think that, that's to me. I said, oh, okay, there's a bunch of privates out here like bent trees over,
Right,
you
right.
know. But they did not look like like these things you see on Les Stroud or something like that, So
Okay. Let me keep on looking here. Well, I want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your night to be on our little podcast
oh, no, I
here.
enjoyed it,
It's
and again, it gives me an opportunity to talk about this, and to hopefully it encourages other, whether it be military, law enforcement, or just anyone, to be able to step forward, so
Well, it's
um,
important for people to hear that just they're everywhere. They're just not in the Sierra Mountains, 900 million miles back in nowhere land. They're on
exactly.
military bases. They're in schoolyards. They're everywhere. These guys, and awareness really needs to happen because
Yeah,
people need to know that they're out there.
yes.
People need to know out there. All right. Well, you got anything to wrap up? Or you got anything else you want to share with everybody? And I'll let you get on with your night.
No, Chris. I mean, again, thank you, for giving me another platform to talk about my sighting. Um, it's like I always tell people, I say, yeah, hey, I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. I mean, yeah, in light of what you may see on these TV shows or whatnot, and I kind of have to laugh at those shows just because I work in an outdoor TV show, right? And our producer, I mean, I hate to say it, that world of TV producers are very close knit, right? So I always tell people, I say, hey, what happened to me was legit. In light of whatever, these purpose Bigfoot shows or whatnot, but hey, I was proud to be a commissioned officer in the United States Army. I stand by what I saw, just like these Navy pilots are standing by what they witnessed over the oceans while they were in a cockpit, right? Those are things that you don't, as an officer, you don't want to come forward with, because that's that's enough to say you're not well enough to lead troops, or you're not well enough to fly $1 million aircraft. you know, um, so I encourage more of our military folks that have any of these types of experiences, to reach out to you, reach out to our Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, just because these are puzzles that are being put together. We are now at this point where our government, ahead of the science community, of all things, is actually acknowledging that they don't know it all, and that what, things need to be studied. So that's
Yeah.
good. So
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. It needs to be more and more. And I think this year is going to be huge for the I like to call them Bigfoot, Sasquatch community, or Sasquatch research or investigations. There's a lot of different groups out there. There's a lot of different types of people that are looking for answers now, and hopefully we can get all that.
So here's a question, Chris, and there's two camps, right? There's the study from afar, or there's bringing a body, right? And I'm not sure which camp you're in. I will just say, my camp. Unfortunately, we are in a world where you have to have proof in front of you, right? Whether it be the head terrorist of the world's baddest organization, right? When we caught bin Laden, we had to have a photograph of him, right? And it was I just think that, unfortunately, the way to get some of the scientific community to actually believe in this is the same matter. They have to have one in front of them. And how that happens, I have no idea. Whether it be some truck driver hits one on a mountain pass some night, or some deer hunter finally sees one and says, hey, that's what I think it is, and he pulls the trigger. I don't know, but I'm not sure which camp you're in, but I personally feel like, hey, one needs to be on a table at some point.
I'm in the camp where I couldn't do it. I couldn't shoot one. I have much respect for these guys. I built over the last 6 years. I got something's going on with me and these guys for some reason. Wherever I go visit, wherever I go do, here in Connecticut, all the way out to Colorado, to Missouri, to Florida, everywhere I've been, I've getting interactions with these guys for some reason. I think personally that with habituation, and you're in their area, you can get them to come in, and I bet you they'll sit down by that campfire. And if you trading with them cans of beans, and they come to love those beans, you put a can of beans and have one come sit 10 feet from you, and you film it all. If that's not enough proof for somebody, then I'm getting, look at it, just talk about it, I get the hair on my arms.
No, I
know agree. That feeling when you see these guys and you see them enough. It's I agree with you, but I can't shoot them. So I'm hoping for that high definition picture is what I'm hoping for.
There you go. Well, thanks for sharing that. Just because, you hear all the time, well, why don't you just shoot one? It's not that easy,
Right. Nobody knows what'll happen. Everybody says, well, if you shoot one, the other ones will get you. Who knows that? Nobody knows that.
Yeah, you don't. But at the same time, it's kind of like, a lot of military members, you gotta, you gotta learn how to move on and live with yourself after that fact,
Right.
So,
and then you take one out and all the hair falls off of it and it looks like a human being. And then what do you do?
Yeah, true. That's true.
And then you got a naked human being right there that you just shot.
Yeah.
You never know.
Exactly. But, no, thanks for sharing that. Just, it's just one of those things. Someone always asks me, "Well, if you see one, why don't you shoot one?" Man, it's a tough thing to do. You
You
know?
look at it in the eyes and you shoot it. See how you do.
Yeah.
I mean, people that never shot a deer, they don't know what happens after you shoot that deer. They don't know what feelings are going to go run through their body. They don't know if they're going to feel remorse because they did it, their anxiety because they don't know.
Yeah.
Can you imagine shooting something that looks like a human being that's got a lot of hair on it and it's looking at you and the white and you see its whites of its eyes or the dark black eyes, like which I think they have,
Yeah.
and pull the trigger and shoot it? No way,
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah. Well,
So
I see that these things are able to reproduce, have offspring. Mothers are able to nurse the young and all that. I mean, it's too personal at that point, you know. So
yep.
yeah. So
It's somebody's mama.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But man, thanks. Again, thanks for having me on. And I look forward to continuing watching you and your team's research. It's very interesting because again, the RF thing doesn't make sense.
No, not
You
one
know,
bit. None of this
yeah,
makes sense anyways,
yeah,
but
yeah, exactly. I mean, you kind of make me want to sit out there with an RF meter when we're in the deer blind or hunting hogs or whatnot, to see if
it won't
those
hurt.
animals make anything go off. I don't think they do. So yeah,
No, it won't hurt.
yeah. Well, thank you very much, man.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it here. And ladies and gentlemen, Captain Joe from the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. I'll see you backstage, my friend.
All right, thank you.
All right. Another show in the books. This was our 20th show tonight. Double X, just like you find in the woods. Again, I want to say, please support your friends. Go out and buy a sticker. I got my Joe Pass Squatching Cowboy shirt, but I don't know where that is. Everybody that I ordered, Connor Flynn was on last week or 2 weeks ago, and I ordered his books on Amazon, and I support everybody. Angie Snow White, I have one of her shirts. So if you got a couple extra dollars here or there, help these people out because we need to get some answers. We need to spread awareness. And who the right people are, and who the people that you don't want to, that'll just take the money and buy a cheeseburger with it. So again, a big thank you to everybody tonight that joined us on the show. I really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell. I got another video coming out by the end of this weekend. I got my new computer finally up and running. I had 2 new people contact me from Connecticut who have sightings, and one of them we're going to go camp out this springtime. I'm going to get him back out in the woods. He's a little nervous about getting back out there, but we're going to go and camp out where he had his sighting. So look for those episodes coming up in the new year. Next up, Mr. Robert Kreider will be next week. I have special guest host, Mr. Johnny Two Bears. If some of you don't know that, we are going to start our own podcast once a month, and it's going to be called Sasquatch IMO. We're going to pick a topic. We're going to talk about it. We're going to give our opinion on it, and we're going to let you all call in and text in or whatever you want to do and give your thoughts on what we're talking about. And then after Mr. Robert Kreider, we got Max Powers is after him. And then our Christmas show is Dave Scott. You know it from SOR. I'm looking forward to having him. If you guys don't know that Dave is a Sasquatch investigator himself up in Canada. And I just did his show a couple weeks ago. If you want to go check that out on his channel, go on over there. It was 2.5 hour interview, and it was awesome. Always have a good time with Dave. So now he's coming to do our show, and he will be the Christmas show. As always, you know what Larry says. Get in the woods, people.